there's a lot of speculation what's going on, a lot of rumors, and I think it's best that the commission itself figure ways to eliminate some of these rumors, give the community some true information that they can talk about and understand within a reasonable amount of time. 270-something days is a long time not to know what's going on.
Amen.
Well received. Yes, sir.
I really think that the commission probably should be able to use the internet a little bit more relative to what's progressing. Because I'm sure most people here have got computers that they get on the internet. It surprises me that you don't set up an internet program for this commission to post information available to the residents, that we can look at it on a immediate situation where we can see, without having to come to a meeting each time, which there's a lot of reciprocation, not reciprocation, but reproduction of the same thing we've heard before, that I think some of that could be eliminated by using the internet.
Point well made. Putting things on the internet to expedite, I think in this era that we're in now, town hall meetings aren't necessarily like this. So I think with these gentlemen across the globe, there will be a lot of interaction using current media. Great point. Yes, sir.
The issue of the root cause analysis of this whole problem that's developed, is that going to be something that this commission will study, or is that for some other group to determine? The root cause analysis.
This group has a very tight focus. The focus of this group is to answer two questions. When is it safe for that evacuation order to be lifted? And what are the long-term benchmarks for monitoring? That's their charge. That is not the scope of this commission. So, yes, sir.
My name is Bob Beaton. I live on Sportsman's Drive, which is immediately south of the command center. You gentlemen all drove by my home, my boat launch, when you went down Bayou Corn. I live on Bayou Corn. I have been living there since a short time after the initial evacuation. I was there at the time the sinkhole formed. I left because I was told to leave by parish officials. I took the contents of my freezer with me when I left. I'm not exactly certain when I returned because I realized in a few days that the threat was not immediate. But after I did return, I have been there continuously since then. There has been no gas in my home. There has been no gas on the bayou. There's been some bubbling up through the bayou. Efforts that were made by the parish to set it on fire early on were unsuccessful. I've driven over that gas dozens, if not hundreds of times, including twice today. And as you can see, I'm still here. There's no gas in the street where I live. And one thing that I would like for the members of this commission to recognize is I don't want your permission to return to my house. I am still there. And I don't want to be told that I have to leave the house. If the gas monitors in my house tell me it's unsafe, if the DEQ finds explosive or toxic quantities of gas either in the bayou or on the street, I'm smart enough to figure out how to do that. Now the business about, quote, lifting the evacuation is all fine and good. But at the end of the day, I can decide when I'm going to live in my house. And I would like for you to be aware that there are numerous people, including 20 other families on my street, who are in exactly the same condition that I am in. And I would like for you to remember that as you go through this thing. Thank you.
I got a question for you. Has this fiasco improved the value of our property any?
No.
Okay. Actually, we discussed that very thing. I don't think there's anything in the charter, and certainly none of the discussions were we looking toward a forced evacuation. Our job is to set metrics, get the evaluations done, to deal with the gas and long-term stability. So there's nobody talking about a forced evacuation at this point. I would be the first one to tell you if I felt that was appropriate. Right now, I think the mandatory evacuation is appropriate, but you get to choose knowing what's going on. Part of my job, once a month, is to come up here and tell you what is going on in the community and everything else, and it is changing. But there is nobody that has tried, it was not even discussed, and we discussed some of the property owners want to stay there. The commissioners were universal, it's a beautiful area, and they can understand that. But our job is to look at the public safety and advise the public so the public can make appropriate choices. And that includes the parish as well as the residents.
Let me respond to that briefly. Mr. Deaton, I appreciate your comments, but as I stated before, this is the parish's position on that. We are relying on these individuals to give us an idea of the risk involved. We've called a mandatory evacuation because we wanted to advise appropriately that the residents, that this risk exists and appropriate precautions need to be taken. Air monitoring, monitoring in your home, and those types of things. We have not forced anyone to leave their home, but similar to a hurricane coming, when we ordered mandatory evacuations, some people heed the warning and leave town. Other people stay. Some people stay with no significant damage to themselves or their property. Other people stay and have a tree come through their home and are significantly damaged. So we agree with you. You have to make that determination. But from a parish's perspective, we're not here to tell everyone it's all safe and all is fine and your community is in the same position it was pre-sinkhole and pre-gas that's migrating in the community. The community needs to understand the risk exists. That's the reason for the mandatory evacuation. There's no issue. As you can hear the gentleman that talked today, there's a lot of issues that still need to be resolved. This problem is still evolving as I can hear it. There are monitoring benchmarks that need to be set up. There are migration benchmarks for gas that need to be set up and adhered to. There are a lot of issues that need to fall into place before we're in a position to be able to say the risk has been eliminated. There is no longer any risk. Your risk is back to the same it was pre-sinkhole. And at that time, and if we get to that point, the parish would be considered lifting the evacuation. But we're not there yet. I know there have been press releases and articles in the paper that discuss, you know, we may be there in 6 weeks, 8 months, or several months down the road. We take this matter day by day, week by week, month by month. We're going to rely on these folks, these experts, to tell us when the risk has been eliminated and when you're back to pre-sinkhole, basically, levels. That may be a while. You know, there are a lot of questions I see is, you know, who's going to pay for this? Who's going to demand this? You know, there are a lot of benchmarks that need to be set up. There are a lot of guidelines. There are a lot of monitoring, subsurface monitoring that we're talking about. We hope that once this report is issued, that the DNR, along with Texas Brine, could come to some agreement and have these things installed, have these monitoring stations put in place so that we could be in a better position to know what the long-term stability of the area, what the gas migration is doing, whether or not it's been eliminated, whether or not we're reducing it, There are a lot of questions that still are unanswered. Very frustrating, because these same questions were posed a long time ago, and we're still battling with the problem. So, just in response to your question, Mr. Deaton, I understand your position, but understand ours is that we want the people to understand the risk, but you do have the right to choose. Yes, sir.
Could you exactly define a mandatory evacuation? What comes with that?
Mandatory evacuation is to advise the public of the specific risk involved, and it is a recommendation for public safety that you remove, you move out the premises. But we are not forcing you out, just as if that's the best way to do it, which we see that comes along pretty regularly. We issue a mandatory evacuation as a category 4 or 5 hurricane coming up Bayou Lafourche. We recommend you leave. But if you decide to stay and you want to stay, you understand the risk involved.
Okay, you stay at your own peril. then.
Stay at your own
The
peril.
question now, does that, in broadening this out a little bit, does that necessarily mean if something serious should instantly happen out there, would there be any reliance by the residents on the parish to help?
If something would significantly happen immediately, I can tell you the parish is stationed there, we're here, and we will do all we can. I know sometimes in hurricane events, once winds get over a certain level,
Oh, yeah.
there's a mandatory evacuation. The public can't expect responses. They can't expect ambulance response, they can't expect first responder response, because they're stationed, they will not move. The parish is stationed and ready to answer and respond if need be. I'd like to now, I just want to clear that up regarding that issue. I'd like to call on Dr. Hecox now for a situational update